So, I'm sitting here with Joe Bob Briggs, and we're going to talk movies, Monster Vision, and new show coming out soon. But I wanted to say you're inspirational to a new breed of movie reviewers, including myself. And the main thing I noticed that set you apart from other critics was that you talk about low budget and exploitation, films. And where a lot of critics would usually tend to talk down to those type of movies, you seem to, you didn't do that. So was that a conscious decision? Like, did you feel like these kind of movies deserved more respect?
Yeah, well, that's something I discovered accidentally. My background is print media, a completely dead form of expression. Mm-hmm. And so I was at a newspaper in Dallas, and I started a column called Joe Bob Goes to the Drive-In. I loved these movies that only played in Texas. They only played at the drive-in. Mm-hmm. In the north and in more urban areas, they played at grindhouses. They were never screened for critics. And so I would call up the distributors and say, "Hey, where can I see your movie? Where can I see Graveyard Tramps? Mm-hmm. We don't screen that for critics." I think the first one I reviewed was a movie called The Grim Reaper, and there was only two of us in the country at the time who reviewed these films. The other guy was a guy named Bill Landis, who had a fanzine called Sleazoid Express. And he would go to every theater on 42nd Street and review not only the movie, but everything that was going on in the movie house, if you know what I mean, and I think you do, and you probably, and a lot of that stuff you didn't really want to know. The mainstream media, the newspapers, refused to review these movies on the basis that they were some kind of pornography or beneath contempt, and so that's how it started. And so I became this sort of anti-film critic, or alternative film critic. It's hard to believe because today, I mean, any exploitation film that comes out, there's 1,000 reviews on the web the next day. So it's a little bit hard to believe that there was a time when they were ignored totally by the media. And in fact, can I do a little rant?
Sure,
that's on my mind today.
We do rants, so yeah.
Herschel Gordon Lewis died, and Herschel Gordon Lewis is, of course, the godfather of gore and made the first gore movie, Blood Feast, in 1963. The New York Times did a kind of appreciative obituary for Herschel Gordon Lewis and says, well, he influenced Tarantino and Carpenter and these other filmmakers. Well, they ignored every fucking film that Herschel ever made, and I knew Herschel, and Herschel would have loved to have been reviewed by the New York Times, even if it was a pan. And I was like, what is this? Is this some way to are they trying to make amends to Herschel when he's dead, or what is this about? And I'm sorry, but he didn't influence Quentin Tarantino. I mean, Herschel was a marketer. He was not a filmmaker. I mean, he didn't know how to do shots that were invented by D.W. Griffith in 1912. Things he didn't know how to do a close-up. So I don't know what they mean by he influenced. I think they were trying to write it in such a way that it pleased the ballet critic or something. But anyway, there's been a whole sea change in the mainstream media's approach to pop culture. Just in this time from the 80s till now. So
yeah, a lot of things just aren't appreciated till late.
Until the guy's dead.
Yeah, I know. So Joe Bob Briggs, it was a character, of course, that you've invented. But when you first started using the name, were people, fooled that was real? Or was it hard to trick people?
Well, my original thing was I wanted to be a populist film critic. I didn't want to be a snooty film critic, And so I was originally going to make it a multi-ethnic name. Mm-hmm. And what I want to do a thing like Mark Twain and Ambrose Bierce and guys like that did in the 19th century, where they would write under several names and nobody knew what was real and what wasn't
pseudonyms,
real.
Yeah.
And so the name, but you can't do that, today. They find you. So, the original name was Bobo Rodriguez, and it was going to be like half redneck, half Mexican, which is a common thing in Texas. And my editor said, no, you can't say Rodriguez. It's like, no, this is going to be weird, and so you need a really white name. And so I just said, okay, Joe Bob Briggs is the whitest name I can come up with. And so,
but everything you say as Joe Bob, like does Joe Bob ever say anything that John Bloom wouldn't agree with?
Not really. I mean, it's an exaggerated. When you grow up in the South, your mother always says, just don't do anything redneck. And it's like John Bloom is the kid at school that's told not to be redneck, and Joe Bob is all my friends at school. So no, I exaggerate. I exaggerate enormously.
Yeah, and over all these generations, with your writings, hosting the movie marathons on TV like Drive-In Theater, Movie Channel, and you had TNT's Monster Vision. Which generation of fans seem to approach you the most?
The most common thing I hear, people who were too young to be watching Monster Vision in the 90s, but they were, able to watch it.
They were censored a lot, as you definitely pointed out.
I mean, much less the people that were too young to be watching Drive-In Theater, because that was a premium channel, and those were uncut movies. They'll come up to me and they'll say, you really influenced my youth. And in some cases they will say, you legitimized my love of these movies because they were getting flack because they their parents hated the movies, their friends said they were crappy movies, and so the fact that they wanted to see these movies and there was a guy talking about them like they were important, that meant a lot to them. So I would say it's those two shows, but it's especially the Monster Vision show, simply because TNT had more viewers than the Movie Channel. The Movie Channel was the fourth premium channel. If you already had HBO, Showtime, and Cinemax, and you wanted to spend another $10, you would get the Movie Channel. Even at TNT, you never knew when it came on. It could come on at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 11:30, and you never knew when it went off, because they would just tell us, as long as you're finished by 6 a.m., we're cool, because that's when we start the programming day. So they kind of didn't.
I never knew how many tapes I should get ready for the VCR.
No, the great thing was we didn't know. We didn't have to time anything, because as long as we were finished by 6 a.m., they were fine with it, and so we had this incredible freedom that you wouldn't have today. But that was because they didn't really care about the show. I mean, they didn't really watch the show, and so the only time they ever watched anything is when I would get in trouble, when they would get letters or they would get protests, and so then they would go and watch that one segment. Oh, I said something real worse than that 3 weeks ago, but you just didn't see it.
One of the things that I liked about the show was that you could always hear the crew members laughing behind the camera. So, like today, but was that all real, or was
No, that was real. Normally when you shoot any kind of TV show, much less a movie, the crew is under strict instructions. You can't make a sound, you can't laugh or whatever.
Quiet on the set. Yeah.
We would have these moments where something would happen, and they would laugh, and we decided we kind of liked it when that happened, and it kind of even though it supposedly breaks the illusion and everything, we just kind of liked it.
I think what we liked about that was you'd walk off the set and you'd go backstage and stuff like that. What we liked so much about that was that it felt transparent, and it's kind of like some of the movies, like the B movies with the strings. You kind of like to see the craft into it. It's sort of like you're being invited to see that.
Right. I always tried to come right out of something that had just happened in the movie and go back to something that's about to happen in the movie, so that it's integrated into the film.
With all the drive-in totals, did you count any of them personally?
I did.
Nice.
Are you saying I would falsify a breast count?
It seemed like a mighty chore. Falsify a breast count.
No. I kept every time I was going to actually review a movie or talk about a movie, I had extensive handwritten notes. in some cases, even if I was in the theater, I had one of those annoying little pens with the light on it.
Oh,
you know,
okay.
where you can like be down here like this. I think he'd be kicked out today, but I would try to do accurate blood, breasts, and beast counts.
The 3 Bs.
The 3 Bs, yeah.
With the star ratings, I noticed you gave 4-star rating very often. So like, was that kind of
the only sin for a film to me is to be boring, and so we did give, I did give 4-star ratings to films that were not necessarily great stories, great, exceptionally well told, but they were just extremely entertaining.
There's a few 1 stars. From what I can't remember what movies they were, but
Super Beast.
Super Beast.
Super Beast.
I never got through Super Beast.
Well, there was no beast in Super Beast, much less a super beast.
So I didn't miss anything.
It was 2 hours of these guys wandering around the Filipino jungles, you know, and I never knew what the plot was. In fact, we had a contest. I said, anybody who can write a coherent description of the entire plot of Super Beast, I'll send you a case of Old Milwaukee. And we actually had submissions, and I got in trouble from TNT because you're not supposed to give away beer as a contest prize.
So of course we know Monster Vision ended in 2000. We all miss it, but nothing lasts forever, such as life. But now you have a new show. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I wouldn't call it a show. We're doing a 24-hour marathon on Shudder.
Okay.
You're not supposed to call it the Shudder Network or Shudder TV. It's Shudder.
Shudder.
Shudder.com.
Okay.
It's nonstop horror films with commercial interruptions, even though we have no commercials. It's just me doing annoying interruptions of the film. Okay. And it's basically Monster Vision, the exact same show. Okay. You know, it's like new material to rant about, different movies to talk about. Although a couple of movies are the same movies that I showed on the movie channel back in the 80s, because the 80s are so popular. In fact, there's a couple of movies that they say have been rediscovered since the 80s, which makes me feel like shit because they were on my show in the 80s, you know. We didn't need to rediscover them. We were celebrating them in the 80s. But I tried to pick stuff that is well known to nerds like us, but maybe not that well known to the publics. You know, the movie that was ignored the first time around, people like us have developed an appreciation for it, and the more times you watch it, the more strangeness you find in it. So it's that type of movie that I really like to talk about.
Did you ever do like Dracula or Frankenstein? Would they allow you to do those type of movies on Monster Vision? Did I just miss those movies?
TNT would give me this thick book of everything they owned and everything that they had under license, and they would have me do check marks by things that I wanted to host. If I checked anything that was in black and white, they would say no. And generally, if I did anything prior to the year 1978, they would say no, because they had marketing data showing that people surfed out of black and white, people surfed out of, you can tell how old a movie is by the nature of the color film. Whatever year the color process changed, they didn't like anything before that, you know. I wanted to show freaks. I wanted to show, that stuff. We had some other really interesting stuff from the 30s and 40s. I would mark it every year. We couldn't show it. We were able to show occasionally one of the big 50s films like Them. We showed the the title's escaping me right now, but the outer space movie that Alien is a ripoff of this 1958 movie.
The Terror from Beyond Space.
The Terror from Beyond Space. So I convinced him to let me show it so we could show Alien and the Terror from Beyond Space back to back. We had to show Alien first, so it'd be on earlier. But it was actually better that way because then I could show, look, the story is exactly the same. The Terror from Beyond Space is exactly the same story, and we could show the exact parallels between Alien and It. So in that case, they allowed it. See, what irritated me more than not being able to show the stuff from the 30s was not being able to show from stuff from 1967 and 1978. And the reason is, those were the years when Hollywood had completely fallen apart. The studios were failing. There was a youth culture. The studio heads didn't know what to make to appeal to the youth culture. And so they were just approving anything. You know, you could walk into, you know, they would make any kind of movie. And so some of the strangest movies ever made are in those years, that 10-year period after Woodstock. And so, including a lot of great horror films that are not as celebrated as the 80s horror films. And so I wanted to show all that stuff, and it was like, no, it was considered too old. People won't watch that stuff. And and so, you know, we missed an opportunity there.
But now that there's so many people on the internet just making videos about, you know, reviewing movies or like, you know, do you think it's become oversaturated, or is
no? I mean, guys like you curate a big mass of stuff that nobody could get through unless you were there to say, you know, this is worth doing, this is not worth doing, this is bad but it's still fun. You know, all these various levels of appreciation. So you're essentially a horror host in another medium.
Yeah.
And that's so it does exist. You're living proof that it does exist. It should exist more because, you know, there's massive consumer confusion about where to go to find what people are, you know, menus are about the worst way to decide on what to watch. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, like you mean like Netflix or something where you're going?
Yeah, I mean every menu on every kind of video on demand service. It's like
because you watch this, here's something else. You know, like that kind of thing.
I mean, yeah, you don't. It's difficult to explore. So they need more horror hosts.
Speaking of creature and all that, what do you think? Shape of Water winning Best Picture. Are monster movies in now? Finally, are they getting their respect?
Well, I think horror movies are definitely in because It was one of the highest grossing movies of the year. Get Out was one of the most critically acclaimed movies of the year. And Shape of Water won everything. To me, The Shape of Water, well, yeah, I mean it's a monster movie. I mean it's kind of an homage to the creature from the Black Lagoon, and it's a little bit more of a fantasy movie. I have problems with it because I think they don't explain the rules about the monster early enough in the movie for it to be a fair ending. That's just me, but you know, they don't explain what powers that monster has.
Well, they do explain.
Actually, I think we're in a time where horror has been integrated into other genres. Directors tend to be nerds. Nerds tend to like horror, and when they grow up, they're still nerds who like horror. And they may be working on $100 million movies, but they're still remembering those things from their horror background.
Yeah,
I think today. You could go back and make some of those, you know, quote, literary monster classics, and you'd get more attention from mainstream Hollywood.
Yeah, and then I guess Universal tried to follow in with that, you know, cinematic universe they call it these days. But trying to do all the monster movies again, and well, they did The Mummy, and
here's the first one, The Mummy. Oh, okay, that was also the last one. Right?
So, what do you think? Like, how do you think if they were to continue with the Universal Monsters or do some new kind of reboot? How do you see? What do you think the best approach would be to do that?
Well, the best approach, let's take Frankenstein. The best approach for Frankenstein is go back to the novel, to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, get a woman to do it. It was written by a woman, you know, and reconceive it without any hokey effects. Do a psychological version of Frankenstein with minimal effects. And actually, the few times that Frankenstein has been done that way, it's been very successful. Dracula, same thing. Go back and just get nerdy docudrama historical on the original Vlad the Impaler.
Okay.
You know, just go back into you know,
all the different
just
letters
Google that fucker 90,000 times until you got stuff that we never knew about Dracula. You know,
Google that fucker 90,000 times.
Yeah. Just keep hitting those links until you're deep into Romania in the 14th century. You know, until you got all kinds of shit we've never seen before about what was going on in that castle. You know, that's what I would do. You know, it's like.
Probably be a long movie, by the way.
And then say authentic. You know, this is the first authentic Vlad the Impaler Dracula.
We just talked about the Universal Monsters. How about the slasher villains? They're rebooting Halloween again. What do you think they should do with all those? Like, do you feel like there's anything left to do, or?
I don't know how you reinvent the slasher. I mean, the slasher was a particular place and time. Part of the strength of the slasher film was that it was despised by the polite public, you know, and they were considered trash, and so they were outlaw films. After Scream, it's hard to go back and do that formula, and for anybody to take it seriously or not know what's coming. Halloween is rooted in its time. If you remake it, you've got to make a movie for this time. You know.
Yeah.
You know, if we must do remakes, let's do some remakes of the films that didn't quite make it.
Yeah.
Tourist Trap. Let's remake Tourist Trap.
Actually, even White Zombie with Lugosi. That would be interesting to see.
Oh yeah, White Zombie. Yeah.
You ever stop and wonder how so many movies get made? Like, it's hard to make a movie. Like, it's just that there exists so many. Like, isn't it crazy?
I actually think more movies should get made. Look, in the year 2000, if you wanted to shoot a movie, you needed a Panasonic camera. That you probably couldn't even buy. You had to lease it at $20,000 a day or something. If you bought it, let's say it cost $500,000. Okay. Today, how much do you have to spend for a camera? Let's say you and I want to make a movie and start shooting tomorrow, and let's say we need 3 cameras because we want to shoot fast. You know. And we want good cameras. We don't want to shoot it on an iPad. We want a good camera. You know, let's say at most we would have to spend $5,000 for our 3 cameras, and have great cameras, have amazing cameras. You know, that we can make 10 more movies with. In the year 2000, editing a movie would have required 12 weeks of intense work in a rental studio. With proprietary equipment that would cost thousands of dollars, if not tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. Today, you know, Final Cut Pro, how much does that cost? I mean, does it cost $500? Does it cost $800? How much does it cost?
Probably not.
Sometimes it's free, you know.
Or you can get it for free.
Premiere $55 a month because it's a subscription now.
So my point is, you know, so 20 years later, the price of making a movie has suddenly become 98% cheaper than it was prior to the year 2000. We should have thousands of movies. Where are the movies? That's my question. Why aren't there more movies? I thought that when the technology got that cheap, we would have so many movies that it's like if you have a million monkeys and a typewriter, they eventually produce Hamlet, right? So we would have all these. We would have at least 100 great indie films a year that are made for virtually nothing. Well, that didn't happen. They didn't show up. The guys making those movies, they either don't get noticed or they don't. Or they leave film school too early, or something. But we didn't have the big renaissance that I thought we would have when the technology got cheap.
Like the movies we see in theaters, they tend to get more and more expensive. It seems like.
Yes, because the other, it's the yin and the yang of it. The other side of that is that the studios have to do something that nobody else can do. They need to do something that costs $200 million. So there are like 5 people in the world that can greenlight a $100 million movie. And those 5 people get all the best material that you can put into a $100 million movie, and they play that high stakes game. Are there 10 of those a year? There should still be 1,000 like regular movies. But we don't really see that. And maybe we are beginning to see that because like I think 4 of the 5 Best Picture nominees this year were indie films. And I mean, to Hollywood, that still might be a $20 million film, but it's not a $1 million film, much less a $100,000 film. I mean, I go to film festivals where literally every film is under $25,000 in terms of actual cash outlay, and there's nothing wrong with the films from production value standpoint. All the flaws in the films are other problems, script problems, acting problems, other problems. So there should be a way to make more films. There's no reason we shouldn't be doing that. For years, the classic format to tell a story was 90 to 120 minutes. And that was considered the ultimate. If you made one of those, that was the ultimate storytelling. Well, we now have like extremely effective storytelling that's 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. We also have extremely effective storytelling that is 100 hours, and in fact, that's where all the great screenwriters want to be now. They don't want to be doing 2-hour projects. They want to be on a multi-season Netflix project. So the fact that we have all these various formats means that the movie is kind of struggling for us to know what to do with it. I mean, if we go to a movie theater, that's what we expect, because that's how much our butt can take, is 90 to 120 minutes. But when we're watching something on our phone, our butt doesn't matter, because we can pause it and we can watch it today and watch it tomorrow and watch it next week, and so. But I still think that there's not enough content to satisfy the demand for content. Like all these companies, all these huge companies that are in Hollywood and Silicon Valley both, are paying billions of dollars to acquire other companies because they have content. There's enough guys who grew up on movies that want to make movies, that understand that format. You would think they would be turning out 2 movies a year, but that's sort of not happening. Everyone is still hanging around LA waiting for their break, and I'm like, guys,
just go ahead and do it. Yeah.
No, guys, there is no LA. There's no more LA. That doesn't even exist anymore. It's like you can't go to LA and start at this level and work your way up. That's not there anymore. Forget that. Wherever you are, Boise, that's where it is. That's where you make the movie. It's the same thing with cinematographers. Like, why were they still shooting on 35 millimeter film in the year 2014? You know, when they could have switched over in the year 2001, because it takes people forever to change their habits. You know.
So, what's the difference between a good exploitation movie and a bad exploitation movie?
A good exploitation movie has all the same elements that a mainstream movie has, in that it has a good story, it has a good structure, it has good acting. It just has an exploitable element that makes it pop culture instead of part of the mainstream. So I think the key is the writing. The key is always the writing. Roger Corman always had the best writers. I once asked Roger Corman, I said, you know, some guy had written a book called King of the Bees. And I said, Roger, how do you feel about being called King of the Bees? And he says, I don't really like it. And I said, why not? And he said, because it implies that there's an A movie that's better than my movie, and that my movie is second rate. And I said, well, how do you feel about being called King of Exploitation? And he said, I love that. And what he meant was exploitation is marketing, you know. Exploitation is being in touch with the audience. So a great exploitation movie touches the audience.
If you had to give this interview a star rating, what would you give it?
This is, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys on the crew and 2 guys in the show. There's not enough women here, so 3.5 stars.
Yeah, we need more women here. We do. It's true.